why do we call hair like this red when it's not even red? It's more like orange, copper, amber, but it's not red. It's not the color of a fire truck or a stop sign. And yet English calls it red and calls the people redheads. Well, this isn't just English being sloppy. Many languages have really interesting mismatches between the hair color names and the actual colors. So something systematic might be going on here. Let's try to unpack it. Alright people, let's start with the $1,000,000 question. Why not just call it orange hair? Well, because for most of the history of English, orange wasn't a color word at all. The word orange came into Middle English from Old French, and it was initially a fruit word, as you already know. And the history of this word runs through Spanish, Arabic, Persian, Sanskrit. But before that point, if you needed to describe that particular shade, you had to use compound descriptions. Old English used something like
geolorade,
which means yellow red. So here's the timing problem. Red hair as a description for this hair color existed centuries before orange became a usable color word in the language. Alright, that makes sense, I get it. But why not just call it using the name of something else that was orange at the time? You're telling me that there was nothing that was orange? What about carrots? Good one. I'm glad you brought that up. Except there's a problem. Carrots, for most of human history, were not actually orange. Before orange carrots were bred in the Netherlands in the 16th and 17th centuries, domestic carrots were predominantly purple, yellow, or off-white. Feel free to read about that because that's a whole nother topic for another video. So when that red hair naming convention got set, there simply wasn't a more accurate word available at the time. Now here's where it gets bigger. Linguists Brent Berlin and Paul Kay ran an influential study in 1969, later developed by other researchers. They compared color vocabularies across many languages and they found something remarkable. Languages don't invent color words randomly. They actually add them in a predictable order. In their original model, the earliest two basic color terms to appear in any language are words for black and white. Oh, black and white are not colors, they're shades. They're colors without hue. Black is the absence of all color. White is an even distribution of all color. Yes, I know. Anyway, like I said, in the original model, the earliest two basic color terms are words for black and white. That's what every language develops first, according to Kay in Berlin. These two linguists then proposed that when a language develops a third basic color term, the word is almost always red. And they mentioned that only after that do languages split off other colors like yellow and green, blue, then brown, and so on. But what about orange? Orange lands in the very last group to show up. It arrives in the same stage as pink, purple, and gray. And we can actually see this in Old English itself. Back then, the word for the color red covered not only what we'd consider red today, but also shades that we now call pink, orange, purple, and some brown as well. So, the original model by Berlin and Kay has been debated and refined since 1969. But all in all, it has held up surprisingly well, especially in basic color categories. Okay, fine, so orange is a color word, didn't exist for so long. Carrots were not orange, Berlin and Kay, whatever. Orange has existed as a normal English word for 500 years now. So why didn't red hair just get corrected once the more accurate word became available? Well, hair color, and sometimes eye color too, in many languages, don't always follow the same naming conventions as general purpose color words. Across many languages, you'll find specialized terms for hair, eyes, fur, and other natural features. The funny thing is these terms often stick, even when the language has a more accurate general color word available. I mean, blonde hair, for example, isn't called yellow hair, even though yellow as a color word existed in English for centuries, but it's not used for this hair color. There's another example in the Italian language. Standard Italian has a general word for brown. Marrone is used for clothes, dogs, furniture, anything brown basically. But for brown hair, castano is generally more preferred. It literally means chestnut. So the body often gets its own separate color vocabulary, and it doesn't automatically get renovated just because general color vocabulary changes or moves on. And this is the same exact mechanism keeping red hair in English long after orange became available. Now, the strangest example in any language is in Serbo-Croatian. In Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian, the word for blonde hair is
plava kosa.
But guess what? Plav is also the everyday word for the color blue. So blonde hair is basically blue hair. I mean, blue eyes are called plava. But there's a twist. Well, there are actually two proposed explanations for this. One analysis says that the blonde sense of plav is inherited from this old Slavic root, meaning something like pale or yellowish. This root has cousins elsewhere in the Indo-European family, like in Lithuanian,
Spalvas.
even Latin, while the modern word for blue may have come separately through a Germanic loanword. So, two words, two different histories that simply ended up looking and sounding identical in modern Serbo-Croatian. However, another analysis argues that both meanings actually developed from that same old Slavic root, whose original range included pale, yellowish, whitish, and even bluish gray. So, linguists disagree whether this is two words that collided or one old word whose meaning expanded and shifted over time. But here's one more layer that makes this even more confusing. The deeper Indo-European history of the Germanic word for blue is itself tangled up with words associated with pale, light, blonde. Another cool example is in the Finnish language, one of my favorite languages. There's a widely used colloquial term for a specific hair color,
maantien-harmaa,
literally road gray, and it's used for a very specific shade of blonde or light brown that isn't actually gray, which is really interesting. It shows that languages can invent hyper-specific descriptions for human features that don't necessarily follow the same naming conventions or standard color categories. None of this is language being broken or careless. This just proves that language isn't black and white, no pun intended. It's way more complicated than that and has many layers to it. How does your language describe hair color? Let us know in the comments. But YouTube will never show you my channel again once you click off, so make sure to subscribe. What if I told you that you've been calling this animal by the wrong name all your life? Because bear is not the real name, and neither are these.
bär, björn,
Медведь.
Lācis.
lokis,
Every single one of the names that we've just mentioned is technically a fake name, a word invented to avoid saying the real one. And once you find out why, you're gonna start noticing this trend more and more, even in your language. Alright people, let's rewind. So, thousands of years ago, way before famous European languages existed, there was a single ancestor language called Proto-Indo-European. We actually don't have a single written sentence of it, but by